If we love the characters in our favorite stories so much, how can the ones we write suck so bad? Characters are what we're really watching in a story. They're the ones that move things forward, the thing we fall in love with. If we care about your characters, we will stick through even the most boring ass parts just so we can find out what happens to them. So how can we create those characters? The ones that people remember, that get turned into toys, that kids want to be for Halloween? Well, the secret is what you focus on when you make them. Because whatever you're paying attention to, that's what the audience is getting later. And after over 10 years working with characters and narratives in comics, animation, games, advertising, I feel like I've got a pretty good grip on it. Ever since I was a kid coming up with stories for my badly drawn OCs, I've been trying to find out how to do it the right way. So whatever methods you've heard of, I've probably tried it. Like creating full backstories, filling up character sheets, developing the character's psychology, starting with the character's design, or even researching astrology so that I could build a character according to a proper zodiac sign. The problem with those methods is that you're trying to create a character in a vacuum. When you try to isolate part of the creative process in order to solve it, you can fall into the trap of doing it to everything, and suddenly you're filling up spreadsheets with hopes that a story will emerge from it. So instead of a dynamic character, we end up with a bunch of data points that don't really matter to the narrative. After more than a decade doing this, my best advice to creating characters is to focus on their relationship to the story, not on who they are, but on what they do. It's probably in my head from working in games, where we talk a lot about verbs, like what does this character do? What action do they perform? Do they slash, jump, grab, push, dive, look? Because whatever it is, that's probably what the game is all about. We can make it simpler than that. Like think of a movie poster. What does the main character look like they're doing? The reason they're portrayed like that is because that's the most important thing about them. That's what we want you to think when you think about that movie. And when we do that, we don't do it because of the character's psychology, we do it because it serves the story. In gaming, that image, the dynamic between character and setting, is usually the game's core mechanic, which is basically what do you do in this game. And the thing about core mechanics is that they have to be fun, whatever fun means for your project. If you're making a game about a guy slashing skeletons with a golf driver, you could write that character starting with a lengthy backstory. But is that the best route? Like, how useful would it be to the process of actually writing the rest of the story? And that's why games are mostly successful if the thing you do in them is interesting, rather than if the characters are well-rounded or not. Not only because most games are not focused on narrative, but also because action comes first when we are engaging with any type of story. Like, visual verbs are our favorite food. That's why books have art on the cover, so we can put context and setting into people's imaginations at first glance. Action guided by well-rounded, complex and contradicting characters can be great, but the action still has to come first in your creative process, because action is on the poster and backstory isn't. Hey there, to help you with your ideas and your stories, I made this file with 10 simple steps called the Story Starter. It's what I use whenever I have a project that has a narrative in it. With the Story Starter, you can take a random idea and develop it into a workable project that you can pitch, sell, present to a team, or whatever you feel like doing. In it, you will find a lesson explaining how to use it and a Notion template where you can easily fill all the steps. Hit the link in the description or scan this QR code right here and off we go. Don't get me wrong, like defining who a character is and how they think can be extremely useful, but I would go into that discovery process after realizing what my story is about. What's its core mechanic? What's this character's verb? Instead of making someone up so that I can only later figure out what they're gonna do. And despite this gaming and slashing arguments, I don't mean this only for fighting or action stories. I mean it for every time someone has to do something. Anything. And I can prove it. Let's take Pride and Prejudice as an example. A story where the conflict is created entirely by how people feel inside and their inability to properly convey or express those feelings. Even in this story, the plot can only move forward, unfold, complicate, and eventually resolve as long as people go to each other's houses and talk endlessly. The conflict brews because of characters' psychologies. but the story can only unfold through its core mechanic, which in this case is visiting each other and speaking at length. So whenever you get yourself trying to write how a character thinks, try to figure out first what that character does. Think of what the story is like. What do you want them to be excited about? What scenes are you excited to create? Then create a character that will thrive in those situations. But don't let them thrive too much. Here we get to the other problem. Like, remember what I said about characters we love? Okay, the key to writing those is to create someone who is, how can I say this, broken. Now what do I mean? I mean that characters should be full of potential, but it has to be unrealized potential. You see, there's this old game called Doom, and Doom can be really hard. Like, when it does, enemies are stronger, you are weaker, there's no ammo, there's a lot of them all at once, and you're just some poor schmuck trying to fight them with your bare hands. But if you play Doom in what's called God mode, you have none of those problems, because in God mode you can't die. The thing about God mode, however, is that it gets boring pretty quickly. Like, Doom becomes another game in God mode, because what makes Doom interesting, what makes games worth playing, is the challenge of dealing with its obstacles and constraints. Like, games are a way to put ourselves through life's endless hardships and problem-solving needs in a manufactured environment. And you know what else simulates life's hardships and problem-solving needs? Stories. But if you write a story where we feel a character is playing in God mode, where a character has no hardships, no problems to solve, our interest physically leave our bodies. It leaves it fast. And since this is a channel called Franchise Kitchen, I should probably talk about stakes, the risk of terrible consequences if the characters don't manage to solve their problems. But this is a video about characters, so let's talk about something else. Let's talk about the thing that makes stakes possible. The character's limitations. When I told you to design a character that thrives in slashing skeletons for your skeleton slashing story, I meant it, but with some reservations. Because if they're too good at what they do, we get bored. Like, if Lewis Hamilton is world champion 7 times in a row, we are no longer watching a competition. Like, he can't lose. He is playing in God mode. And the same happens with your character. If your character is the absolute best in slashing skeletons, it can be fun for a while, but we want excitement and danger and stakes. If he's bad at basically everything, if he's a poor loser who can never get a break and is mistreated by everyone, and one day the city is taken over by undead skeletons coming out of their graves and everyone is afraid, no one knows what to do, everybody is panicking, and suddenly our main character, that dirty bastard, realizes for some previously established reasons that he's really good at slashing skeletons, then we're interested. Think about it this way. The guy in the Star Wars poster was either pointing a gun or holding a sword. And that's basically his dream, to live adventures out in space. But who is he in the beginning of the story? He's a little farmer kid whose uncle won't let him wander too far from home. Adventures in space are the moon for him. No pun intended. Hence, his dreams of pointing guns and holding swords are very hard to achieve. So when he finally does what he wanted to do, we're interested. A character has to start as far away as possible from what we want to see them doing, so we can really savor how special it is when they finally do. In my video about what stories actually are, I wisely postulated that stories are about someone wanting something and not getting it. That someone is the first thing in the whole definition because the character is key to the story. So you're right to pour all of your creative powers into fleshing them out, but the relationship to the story is what really matters. In a story, we're not interested in the characters, we're interested in what they do. Their psychology can be extremely complex, but unless they do something interesting with it, we're not staying. Think of it this way, your character is a scuba diver. Deep into the ocean, they can find magnificent wonders, but they can also encounter deadly threats. So in a story where this is the protagonist, would you have them in a court of law? Sitting at a restaurant, working at a tow booth? Like, you can even put them in an exciting situation. The scuba diver can go on a mountain bike competition, they can start wrestling, they can go to space for all I care. The question is, why are they not scuba diving? If you make a scuba diver character, they better scuba dive, because that's what you promised. And the only way that this character can do that is if the story allows them to. If the character is a chef but the story is in a pet shop and that person never gets to cook, something's gotta change. The story has to provide the character with the opportunities to do the things they do. Otherwise, you have to change either the character or the story. I know that this is a somewhat remote possibility. It's not like you're writing a necromancer series starting a dentist or something. But it's also true that we sometimes get carried away with some minor things that become so fun to write that we're suddenly on page 24 of a dialogue that has nothing to do with the actual story. And you know why? Because characters are fun. They are supposed to be interesting to the audience, and in trying to do so, they become very interesting to us. In the words of fictional manga savant Eiji Nizuma, I want to see what these characters are gonna do. So how can you have this cake and also eat it? How can you extract as much as you can from your characters at the same time as you make sure that they are serving the overall experience that your story provides? Well, it's not that hard. You just have to know what makes characters work. Engine-wise, there are 3 elements that make up a character. If we look at our definition of a story, if we really squint our eyes, we can see all of them. So, stories are about someone wanting something and not getting it, right? So, there we have a character, someone, and a motivation. They want something. We call that a desire, and that's number 1. What makes characters go forward, progress, and achieve their goals is that they have a goal to begin with. There's something lacking in their lives and they want to get it. But the other thing about stories is that they can't get it. Why is that? Well, physically, what prevents characters from getting what they want are what we call obstacles. And we also have them in real life, like whatever we're trying to do, there are things in the way. But in regards to characters, there's also something internally that prevents them from achieving their goals. Genius scientist K.M. Weiland calls this the lie your character believes. Imagine 2 characters, both of them want to be famous, but one of them is afraid that people will think they look ridiculous, and the other is award winner drag superstar RuPaul Charles. Now, which one of them do you think will succeed? If we take every possible obstacle out of their way, do you think that this belief, this fear of other people's opinion, would prevent one of them here from fulfilling their dreams? Yes we do, because despite us removing all of the external obstacles, one of them has an internal one. We call that a flaw. There is a flaw in your character's beliefs. You could even call it a character flaw. There's a character flaw in your character. Is any of this getting true? So here we have the 2 most important things that make a character work inside of a story: a desire and a flaw. In order to fulfill that desire, your character needs to realize the truth about that flaw. They have to stop believing in that lie, that misperception they have about things. You know how athletes are always talking about mental strength? That's what we're talking about here. So in order to win a tournament, a tennis player has to first of all believe that they can be a champion. A little like if you want to sleep, you first have to pretend to be asleep. To get what they want, in order to overcome the obstacles, they first need to overcome themselves. And that's what we're talking about when we say there's what the character wants and what the character needs. And once they realize one, they can get the other. If you've never heard of this, leave me a heads up in the comments and I'll make a video explaining it. It's pretty useful stuff. This transition between doubting themselves and achieving their goal is what we call their journey. And since the character is going over obstacles, we can also call it a character's arc. But what about the other thing? Well, number 3 is how they do it. Because you can't really see it at first glance, but if you look closely, when I say that someone is not getting it, the implication is that they're trying. Now, although the character's arc or that hero's journey can have a very psychological and therefore internal aspect to it, the way we show that transition usually has a very important physical, visual, aesthetic part. Therefore, this has more to do with the story's dynamic, the core mechanic, the movie poster, than anything else. We call it tools. They're the things your character does, they're verbs, they're superpower, if you will. If a character wants something, what can they do in order to get it? What tools do they have at their disposal? And that's why what the character does has to be related with the story. Scuba diving tools can't fulfill someone's dreams of becoming a rock climber. Tennis tournaments can't be won by culinary skills, and a dentist is not equipped to win against necromancers. To write good characters, you first have to realize what they do in your story. What are the actions gonna be like? What are the verbs? What would that look like in the poster? Because that's gonna be the premise of the whole story. That's what you're promising the audience. You can't promise very interesting character psychology. You have to promise someone wanting something and not getting it. And how that takes place, how that happens, is gonna be made way more interesting with a well-written character. But to grab our attention, you first have to know what's the story about. And the answer to that is never about who the character is, but always about what the character does and what happens to them. Now let's go write.